Hi, Gemini Sun and Rising. Welcome to your March 2023 Astro Update. It's Rena here. Well, March is a month that you may have heard some buzz about. This is because there are two outer planets, in other words, the opposite of personal planets, that have a relatively short transit time. These outer planets take a long time to go through one sign, although even that will vary because we have Saturn going into Pisces, and Saturn has um, almost a 3-year transit through one sign. But then the other one that's happening in March is that Pluto's going into Aquarius, and Pluto has, at least 15 years as a cycle. When it goes into Aquarius, it's going to be there for 20 years. So that is really unreal. And so for them to both be happening in the same month is pretty important stuff. I mean, it really does show that the tide has turned because, in addition to that, this is a month where there's a new moon the very next day after the astrological new year. And a few years ago in 2020, I wonder how many people think of 2020 as a lifetime. Well, as you get older, it does go quite quickly. Maybe I wonder about the young people if they think back to when we had the shutdown. That's what I'm referring to. Back in 2020, it was right around the time of the um, astrological new year, or as we say in the northern hemisphere, the spring equinox. And this is when the sun goes into Aries. Well, to have a new moon at 0 degrees of Aries the very next day really highlights a whole new era, in addition to those other things I mentioned. And then to top it off, we have Mars finally leaving the sign of Gemini after 7 months. Now, that doesn't even measure up to what I just was talking about with those other two planets, but still, Mars usually goes to the next sign within 6 weeks. It was because Mars did retrograde and that slowed it down. But yeah, all in the month of March. Now, March is a time when it's common to see a lot of transits in the sign of Pisces. The sun is in Pisces as the month begins, and then, a lot of times there are new moons there. And Pisces is a mutable sign like Gemini. Pisces is your 10th house of career, Gemini. So this is a time of the year where every year you may notice that you have some developments with career. Maybe not every year, but in the years that something does change. But this is even more special because not only do you have Neptune transing that area, that very public 10th house, and this has been going on for a decade, but now Saturn has entered the picture. So I have a more in-depth video that on my channel that explores the transits of Saturn and Pluto in their new signs, and also talks about the signs that they have been occupying for these past however many years, because that's important too, since especially for Pluto, that's something that is going to continue because Pluto's only going to go to that 0 degree mark, and then it's going to retrograde back into Capricorn during 2023. So on the second of the month, which by the way is 322023, that's pretty cool. Mercury goes into Pisces. So Mercury goes into that 10th house. You may be talking to people in positions of authority. Obviously, if you're looking for work and you're contacting the head of a company or whatever, some boss, Maybe you're negotiating a salary. Maybe you are speaking before the public in some way. On the 7th, this is very interesting. So, this is when Saturn goes into Pisces, goes into that 10th house, the house that it rules. But on the same day, there's a full moon at 16 degrees of Virgo. That's interesting. I mean, in your particular chart, this falls in your 4th house of home and family, Virgo. And of course, this is a general reading. So when I make that statement, I'm saying it because of that. But the thing is that Virgo, as a sign in astrology, rules the 6th house, which can be work, office. In your particular chart, Virgo is your 4th house, but just if we go by the sign of Virgo and what it represents, so that full moon in Virgo can be like discovering what your path of service is to others at the same time that you are experiencing Saturn going into that 10th house. It's almost kind of like this um, 1-2 punch, or this sense of maturation. Saturn is old age, it's father time, and when it's transiting the 10th house, you may feel like you are going to have to get down to brass tacks and really work hard at something. And sometimes it doesn't sound very appealing, does it, to work hard? But the point of this is that you are laying down a foundation that is going to benefit you in the future. So if you are one of those people who feels this sense of resistance to any kind of notion of like, oh my God, I'm going to have to slave away here, it's really more about being serious about what you're doing, really taking those steps, being methodical, being organized, being disciplined to get where you want to be, because the 10th house can be success. And so, like I said, this is several years that you're going to have this transit. So, who knows what will happen at the end of it? You may find that you are doing amazingly in terms of the influence that it has had on you. That well, it's not in opposition, but in the opposite house, that full moon at 16 degrees of Virgo can speak to issues around your childhood. The 4th house can be the mother, and the 10th house can be the father, and actually Saturn can also be the father. So what this can mean is that either like you are dealing with your parental issues, and sometimes that can be perhaps a bit daunting, because you may feel like you're being pulled in different directions, but you may find out something about your mother when there's a full moon in the 4th house. You may have an insight about your childhood. You may let go of something from your childhood. Maybe that was holding you back. On the 16th, Venus goes into Taurus, which is awesome because Venus rules Taurus and rules that 2nd house of earned income that Taurus rules, which bodes well for all of us financially. So this is coming right before the equinox, and I'm not saying that everybody's going to be cut a check or anything like that, but it might be good economically, in terms of the economic system, or for you, this is falling in your 12th house. But it's interesting, on the same day that Venus goes into that 12th house, you have Mars coming out of its shadow in Gemini. So for Gemini Sun and Rising people, this can mean that Gemini is now officially back up to speed. So, yes, it still has about 4 more degrees, 5 more degrees to go before it goes into, well, actually, like, yeah, 5 more degrees till it goes into the sign of Cancer, which it will do later this month, but it might really make you feel more energetic and also that you're moving forward. On the 19th, your ruler Mercury goes into Aries, which forms a friendly angle with you, Gemini, namely the 11th house of hopes and wishes. And so this could be something where you are. So the 11th house is the house of friendships and groups. Mercury here means that you're communicating with them. So for whatever reason, Gemini, if you have been doing other things, been working a lot, certainly with those plants in the house of career, you might be working a lot and haven't had time to kind of touch base with your friends. You might reach out right at the time of the turning of the season to spring in the northern hemisphere and autumn in the southern hemisphere. And at that time, this is right before the sun is going to go there. So now we see that there is this strong emphasis in the second half of March in this very social area that is ruled by Aquarius in astrology, the 11th house. So Mercury goes there on the 19th, on the 20th, the sun goes there, and then on the 21st, there is a new moon there at 0 degrees 50 minutes of Aries. Okay, so that is a very, new moon. It doesn't get any newer than that at 0 degrees, right? So, in addition to being a very social area, this is also the area of your hopes and wishes. Now, sometimes these things intersect. If you are meeting new people, you might be having new kinds of goals because you're being influenced by new people. And, these goals or these things that you want to manifest could run the gamut, including where you want to live. So, all of this fresh energy is in Aries, is all clustered in that 19th through the 21st of the month. So new moon wishes are, yes, I mean, technically it's going to be in the 11th house, but because it's at 0 degrees, it's likely in your career sector. So you can also make or set intentions for career matters as well. On the 23rd, Pluto goes into Aquarius. Now, this is a friendly angle for you. And for Gemini, this is actually your 9th house. So I think it's going to be a little bit less intense than when Pluto was in your 8th house. Because, first of all, when it was there, it was in this water house that Pluto actually co-rules with Mars, which is Scorpio's domain. And it's not very pleasant. It's really about shadow work. Psychology is kind of part of that. And not really, so it's not very pleasant and warm and fuzzy. But it is something that is part of life. And now it's in the ninth house. Now, there could be some similar themes with spiritual beliefs, but it's coming from a more, uh, I was going to say regimented perspective. I meant like there are these belief systems already created that are surrounding religions, various religions, but also your own personal philosophy can be the ninth house. Like I said, I think earlier, I do have longer videos on how these transits will affect these houses. So I'm not going to really go too much into that, especially since Pluto's only going up to 0 degrees of Aquarius in 2023. On the 25th, Mars goes into Cancer. So finally, Mars has left your sign, Gemini. And you may feel like, oh, thank God. Maybe you were energized, but then you had a couple of months there where you didn't have, actually more than a couple of months. It was like 2.5 months where maybe you felt run down. You felt like you didn't have that much energy. And now you're springing back to life. Well, you've already done that. But now you have Mars going into your second house with when it goes into Cancer on the 25th, and this can make you feel this sense of urgency when it comes to making money, and that you may feel like you have all the energy in the world to just like make some serious money. Having those plants in the 10th house, having Saturn there, it's giving you that extra boost to do that. So that's what I have for you, Gemini. I hope you enjoyed this. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.